Hi guys, welcome back. So in this video, as I mentioned in the chat, I'm just going to do a question and answer. The next video is probably not going to be for a little while, just because we're halfway through quite a lot of things, halfway through the bathroom, halfway through the kitchen, and halfway through painting the walls and so on. So I prefer to show it to you once those things are complete, or once we've completed one thing. So, as I said, we'll do the question and answer. Right now I'm filming in one of the boys' bedrooms. As you can see, it's an integrated bunk bed with a desk underneath. It's pretty cool. It's built in. I'm not sure exactly what we'll do once the boys get a bit bigger and older, but cross that bridge when we come to it. Anyway, let's jump in. So how difficult is it to get tools and materials, and is there something like Home Depot? It's pretty easy to get tools and materials. You've got home centres like Home Depot. I've never been to Home Depot in the States, but in Australia you've got Bunnings, and in the UK you've got B&Q. And I would say they're probably going to be a little bit smaller than those places. And they tend to have a big range. They don't just do the DIY stuff, but they also have supermarkets and arts and craft incorporated into it as well. So out here in the countryside, those places are pretty big. We've got one called Joyful Honda, nothing to do with Honda, the motor car company. And there's another one called Llama that I go to. And they're quite good for pretty much anything you need. Of course, you can buy stuff online. It tends to be a little bit cheap, although they can be competitive, those home centres as well. And also, the carpenter has told me where he gets his tools, and that's a pretty big store. I haven't been there yet. For some reason, my wife's not that keen for me to go there, but I'm going to get there at some point, I'm sure. I got quite a lot of questions about the costs of this project, and I have said that I'm going to tell you guys, and I will tell you guys, but not in this video. The reason being is that we haven't finished, and the costs are kind of hard to break down, but I have been keeping track of them. Needless to say that it's not cheap. We're not doing it in the most simple way possible. Also, we have gone over budget. Some people have asked. And I'd say the areas we've gone over budget have been some unexpected repairs. For example, the Genkan, the entrance damage was more severe than expected. We've also made a few changes to the design which have increased the costs. Also, some things have been a little more complicated for the carpenters. The house is not square, so it's kind of a bit more complication to a lot of the work that they've done. The cost of carpenters themselves was quite a bit over the initial budget. But I think it's going to be all worth it in the end, so I'm happy with the way it's going, and I will let you know in the end how much the total price has been paid. But to give you some kind of indication, probably looking at around the cost of a cheaper end new home in Japan. So, and that's not including the land. So I think it is reasonable for the quality of house and the renovation work done so far. In terms of water, yes, we are connected to the city line, and the house has always been connected to the city line as far as I know. There was a well that was used for agricultural purposes, but that's no longer functional. I don't think it's a very deep well, and it wasn't drinking water quality. We may put in a well ourselves, a bit closer to where we need it at some point. Now for the sewage, the house had a septic tank, and that septic tank was broken. So we got that septic tank filled with sand. So we decided to get a sewage line built from the road to the house. It's about 60 metres. I think in the long run it's better to go that way, even though it probably is initially a bit more expensive than getting a new septic tank. So the neighbours have been really friendly. We met most of them in this area. A few have stopped by the house. We actually knew someone in this little hamlet before we moved here. think I mentioned in one of my earlier videos, they were the person that gave us a bit of a lowdown on this property, the history, which made it a bit easier for us to buy the house property. Also, one of the direct neighbours, the one with the blue roof, their son is the same age as my kids, and so they are in the same class at school. But yeah, I think overall everyone's been pretty pleased. Been pleased that we're bringing some younger kids into the area, give it a bit of life. So overall, no problems at all. Yes, so we raise our kids bilingually. I only speak English to my children, and my wife only speaks Japanese to them. So if my children speak Japanese to me, I kind of ignore them or pretend that I don't understand it. They don't like my Japanese anyway. They think it's a bit weird. So usually don't have too many problems. So the kids, I think, have mixed feelings about moving in general. I think that's quite normal. On one hand, they're excited to have their own bedroom and move to a bigger house and have this garden that can play in until later in the evening and so on. It was nice seeing the excitement on their faces when they first saw their bedrooms, and they've already chosen their rooms. They didn't fight over whose room was whose, which was quite surprising. But on the other hand, they're moving a little bit further away from some of their friends. They're not too far away that they can't ride, but moving closer to other friends. So along, not only in this hamlet, but in sort of adjoining hamlets, there are other kids that are friends that go to the same school. So, they're going to kind of be closer to some and further away from others. But I think that overall they'll be fine. And they're getting big enough now, like I said, that they can ride their bikes and so on, and their friends can come here quite easily. So I don't think there's going to be any problem there. I guess only one negative is that they have complained a little bit that I've been spending a lot of my time here. So I've tried to make sure that I'm not here all the time, and I still go and watch them play football and play with them and so on. But it's something I need to be a little bit careful of. So in terms of the local area, yeah, there's not much around here. There's certainly no restaurant or anything in this hamlet. The nearest supermarket is probably about 2 kilometres away now, so it's not really walking distance, but you could ride a bike. And of course, it's a really short trip in the car. To get to a bigger city, it's not so far away. It's about a 15-minute drive. So we want to go to restaurants and places like that. Those sort of bigger towns have pretty much everything. So the only problem really is that we want to have a drink. We've either got to have one of us not drinking and being the designated driver, or we could catch a taxi. A taxi is about $30, so it's not something that you really want to do too often. So that's one of the downfalls, I guess, of living in an area like this. At the same time, it forces you to, eat in and cook for yourself and save money. So it's not so bad. I'm quite happy. It's a nice balance for me at this time of my life. So the most beautiful part of the house is probably the roof. I really just love how, I guess, majestic it looks. When we use the second floor, I'd like to put skylights or something in, but I don't really want to put anything on the roof. And likewise, in terms of solar panels, it would be good to go solar at some point, but I certainly don't want to put any panels on the roof. So I guess, yeah, apart from that, I love the ceilings, the the cedar and keaki ceilings are really beautiful, so obviously we aren't touching those, leaving them as is. In terms of foreigners buying property in Japan, so no, you don't need to be married to a Japanese to buy property. A foreigner can buy property, no problems, in Japan. Just like any other thing, it's going to be more helpful if you can speak Japanese or you can read all the documentation and so on, but, no extra barrier apart from that. So in terms of the visas, there isn't really a requirement, but having a property in Japan doesn't mean that you're going to get a visa. So you could, I guess, buy one as a holiday house or a rental or something like that, but you would need to organise a visa in order to live in the house somehow. I mean, I think a lot of foreigners are buying these properties, but it'll only be a small drop in the ocean in terms of how many abandoned houses there will be in the next 20 years. But I think the number of Japanese doing this is always going to outweigh the number of foreigners. And there are Japanese people who are renovating and I guess moving out to country areas. It's not a huge amount, and of course the trend is to still go into urban areas. But yeah, there are Japanese doing it. I don't think the number of foreigners is ever going to be huge enough to solve the Akia, or the abandoned property or empty property situation in Japan. Yeah, generally, in terms of hidden costs, in terms of like debts on the property, you probably just want to double check that if you're buying. In our case, we were buying from the tax office, so those debts had been cleared, and I guess the tax office is looking to refund the money it had lost by the sale of the property. Yeah, I'm loving the whole process of the renovation. I've had no regrets. I can honestly say that I've never had a moment where I thought to myself, "Oh, we have made a big mistake here," or "We shouldn't have done this." So I've been more than happy with how it's gone. That being said, yeah, there have been some difficulties. I think the biggest problem has just taken longer than we had expected or hoped for. So I think I said before that we kind of planned to have it finished by the end of March. There hasn't been any specific reasons for the delay. So it hasn't really been affected by the pandemic or anything. The carpenters have come in as usual. They don't come in every single day, but they come in most days, most working days during the week. Some delays have been caused by the weather. So we've had a particularly wet, rainy season. Well, it seems to me, I've only been here a few years, but it seems to be quite a long rainy season, and that's caused the guy who's responsible for doing the siding, on the side of the dormers, the black galvanized metal siding, and he's done some other roofing for us, the sort of metal roofing in other parts, like the kirioke. He's been really delayed because he can only really work on dry days. So we did spend some time waiting for him to finish his work so we could take the scaffolding down, and that held up some other work like the bathroom area that could only be done once the scaffolding had been removed. So I'm most excited about the kitchen, I think, because I've always wanted a really nice kitchen. I enjoy cooking, so I'm looking forward to having a lot more spacious kitchen compared to the pretty cramped one we've got now. Do I have a background in this? No, this is the first house that I've owned, and this is the first house that I've worked on. I have always been interested in DIY and making stuff, so I've made like small things, benches and little tables, and I always tried fixing little things that I could. So I'm interested in it, and I'm not sure I'm good at it or not, but I think when you're interested in something, that helps. So I mainly just learned from internet. Of course, I asked the carpenters for advice on things as well, and watched a lot of YouTube videos. No, I've never been discouraged at all by people's conservatism. I know the way we're doing it won't be to everyone's liking, whether it be people watching YouTube or Japanese people as well. But I've kind of with my wife kind of aimed to design something that we're happy with and that suits our tastes. The question about whether we're going modern or traditional, we're trying to find a balance. Now, I think that would be too modern for some people, but for us, I think we've got it just right from what I've seen so far. And I really appreciate the feedback and comments from all of the viewers and subscribers. Yeah, it doesn't have to be positive or anything like that, but I really like sharing this and hearing people's thoughts and interacting. So I'm quite isolated here. I mean, I'm not that far away from towns or anything, but in terms of foreigners, there aren't very many in this area. I don't think I've ever I have bumped into a couple around here. I've got friends in Tokyo. It's quite far to go into town. It's about an hour on the train, and last train sort of 11:30. So it's not so easy. So it's good, doing this, and I've enjoyed interacting and connecting with people. I don't think I've ever disliked any of the kind of more tiring jobs like the sanding or painting. Yeah, I can't honestly say that I've hated it. There have been days where I haven't felt like doing it, but I've never thought, okay, I wish I hadn't done this, or, I want to get someone else or hire someone to do those sections that I've sort of decided to do myself. Yeah, I guess I balance it and just try to make sure that I am conscious about spending time with the family and doing work when I need to do the work. I don't think being in a rural area has affected the process at all. Well, actually, no. There are a couple of things. It has been a little bit harder to find certain things that needed to be done. So we had a particular bath. I guess one of the issues was that the architect is based in Tokyo. So some of the things he wanted to be done perhaps weren't really so common out here. For example, the style of bath, we wanted that sort of half unit, half wood bath. We had to get some tradesmen from Tokyo to come out and put in the bath section there. Also, there were certain other design ornaments that we couldn't find really locally as well, so we had to go out of the prefecture to find someone who had the skills to do it. So we started the renovation in October last year, 2019, and we'll hopefully be finished before October. Well, I'm pretty sure we'll be finished before October. I hope to be finished by the end of August. At the moment, like I mentioned earlier, it's little things. Well, not little things. It's painting. The kitchen and the bathroom are just being finished now. So I hope that within sort of the next month and a bit, we're ready to move in. There are always going to be some other things that need to be done, but they can be done by myself once we've moved in. We're just staying a couple of kilometres away in the house that we have been living in since we arrived in Japan, which is my wife's family home. So we live with the mother-in-law. Yeah, about the blinking, I am remembering to blink. The funny thing is, and this is because I was quite new to YouTube and doing this sort of thing, is that I didn't realise that you were supposed to blink. So I'd always thought, and I never really paid attention to it, that newsreaders never blinked. But now when I watch it, they do blink. So I was making a conscious effort not to blink in these videos, combined with the fact that I was actually sort of memorizing from a script. So I would remember one sentence, say it to the camera, cut, next sentence, say it to the camera, cut. And all that time I was focusing on not blinking. So when I went back and edited it, it was like one long stream of staring. So I edited it so that everything flowed like I was saying the script in one continuous piece, except that, yeah, obviously I'd left all the blinking bits completely out of it. So I've already talked about my kids. they don't really help them much with the renovation. I get them to do a bit of weeding and so on. But I want them to enjoy the house once they move in. I don't want to sort of create any more sort of negativity. Like I said before, I'm spending quite a lot of my time here doing this. So I want them to enjoy it when they come and just play. My wife actually is quite involved with the renovation. She helps quite a lot. She's not so keen to be on YouTube, which is why I don't film a lot of her stuff. But she's pretty good with, for example, the reciprocating saw. She loves it. So she gets to work with cutting up bits and pieces with that and so on. And she works a lot in the garden too. So yeah, she's enjoying it. I mean, she'd probably say the same thing as me. She's loving the whole process and hasn't regretted it. Although I probably should ask her to confirm that. I don't think there was any massive hurdle. There have been kind of a lot of small hiccups along the way, but nothing major. I think our particular situation in which we found the original builder, we've since used a different carpenter, which was out of our control. And the architect was a friend of ours who's quite accomplished in Tokyo, who had offered to help on this project as well. So we kind of had those architects and carpenters who had never worked together. And I'm sure that happens in various projects, but that's kind of resulted in few little things not going as smoothly as it would have if it had been like a single firm or an architect and builders that had worked together beforehand on other projects. So just a lot of the things were just little details, like the way the architect liked trim to be done, redoing a few little things here and there, or some sort of misunderstandings there, even though they're both Japanese, and I think that's probably it, but nothing major. So that's a good question, whether I would have done anything differently. Well, if you look at what the biggest, I guess, hassle has been, I wouldn't change that. It was, I think, of course, working with an architect that we could trust and that we know, and he's gone really above and beyond what he probably expected at the beginning too. And then being able to work with these carpenters has been really good as well. So I wouldn't change that, but maybe working with so maybe if I was to recommend someone else doing a project like this, I would, obviously it's common sense, but have some people that have worked together, or even just a small firm. I think if we hadn't found this particular situation, probably would have gone with this small company that specialises in renovating houses like this, and they were really good. They were more expensive, but we really liked their designs, ideas, and their model houses. Well, not model houses. They had some houses that renovated before, and they were able to take us and have a look at them. And I thought they were really good, so I'd probably recommend that. Again, I wouldn't go back and change anything we've done, but that's one thing. Another thing, maybe, it's hard to say, and I think that's more just because this has taken longer than we anticipated and hoped. I'm kind of getting a little bit impatient now, so perhaps I do sometimes think maybe we could have done it a little bit more simply. But at the same time, I think that will be forgotten in a couple of months' time once we're settled in here and enjoying the place, and we'll be completely glad and happy that we did everything that we wanted to do and have the house that I guess that we dreamed about. So we've approached this house with the idea that it's going to be the house that we live in for the long term. You mentioned the depreciating prices, and that we won't be able to sell this house for as much as we've spent on it. And I guess that's an incentive for us to imagine that we won't sell it and just keep it. I mean, I don't know what our kids will want to do with it, but my wife and I, we're happy to stay here long term, and I guess, past retirement. I think in a dream situation, we would have a place in Australia, this place here, and we could move back and forth, but we'll see. So I ran out of memory card there, probably a good place to end it. The video is already quite a bit longer than I thought it would be. I know I haven't got through many of the questions, and I haven't answered, even the ones I've answered there, exactly everything that you asked, so sorry about that. But what I'll do is I'll end it here, and I'll do a part 2 in the next few days, and I'll edit that and try and get that out in probably next week or something. So thanks for all the questions, and thanks for watching, and I'll see you again shortly.